Hey, churchies. Welcome to our study of American Methodism. And if you're wanting to know, this is the book that we are going to be looking at and studying through, written by Russell Ritchie, Kenneth Rowe, and Gene Miller Schmidt. The individuals joining in my class are Bascom Ratliff and Marion Adele. And so Mary Nadell is kind of our facilitator, and Bascom is my fellow classmate. And so the first class that we looked at, or the first lesson we looked at, was the early years of American Methodism, years 1735 through 1860. And so to give you my top 10 of those first three chapters, this is my list of the 10 most important moments of the beginning of the American Methodist movement. Number one, the beginning work of William Otterbein. Otterbein appears to plant the original seeds of the Methodist movement, setting himself apart from Calvinistic beliefs of predestination. Otterbein made it clear to hearers that his Reformed doctrine eschewed hyper-Calvinist notions of predestination and made a significant place for human volition and responsibility. He also established the ideas of itinerating by traveling and preaching in those early days. Number two, the foundation work of Joseph Pilmore. Pilmore declared colonial uniformity with Methodist standards, connecting to Wesley submission in his ordering and prohibition against celebration of the sacraments by unadorned preachers. He ordered and organized many of those early ideas, such as handling of the sacraments by unordained preachers, which is still adhered to today, I know, as well as instituting the large minutes of the structure of the Methodist way. He was also one of the first to speak out about slavery. Number three, it's hard to simplify Asbury's impact on the Methodist Church. I think of laying the foundation of diversity was one of the most important. It would be a biracial, highly emotional, effective, and expressive family-based community of love. It would engage the religious sensibilities of women, widows, and it would empower as leaders young men. Allowing the inclusion of minorities and women would create their own branches of the Methodist movement. Number four, the first meetings of 1772 is important for not only solidifying their structure and belief, but also creating the idea that these pastors and preachers can come together to stay united and to remain united in their endeavors. Number five, I think that the loyalty to England during the Revolution is fascinating. You think about Wesley and the others being English, and the idea that they are committed to the same cause. However, on the outside, you see the fracture between England and America. How do you preach unity when everyone in America wants division? To be arrested and persecuted during those times make me question how I would have responded in that time of the Revolution. You know, on this side of history, as an American, I would think, obviously, I would preach the liberty and freedom aspects from an oppressive ruler, but many of them didn't go that way. I don't know if it's significant because it didn't make or break the Methodist movement, but it is still so interesting to think about. Number six, equally as enlightening was the stance that the church took against slavery. In 1780, Asbury discusses the idea of compelling slaveholders to release their captives, 80 years prior to the Civil War. You wonder if the church would have been more vocal or more ambitious in their desire to wipe out slavery. Perhaps they would have been successful. However, you see, they stepped back from that position when people started to oppose the idea, which is understandable. A young movement can not risk killing itself over one stance, but still, on this side of history, it would have been interesting to see how it would have turned out had they stayed the course. Number seven, Joshua Soley outlining the restrictive rules of 1808 is pretty important when you look at the influence the larger conferences had over the denomination. The focus on equality is important because it gave every conference an equal voice. Number eight, the creation and production of the Methodist literature. I did not realize that it played such an important piece of the early church. From using it, again, keep a central message, but the idea that pastors used the selling of the books to supplement their income, right? From tracts to hymns to hymn books, they printed a lot of material to help keep their congregations informed. It's interesting to see how that printing press or the print made such a difference in the early Methodist church. Number 9, parsonages. I didn't realize that the idea of parsonages and keeping a pastor in a community was such a hotbed topic in the early days. And you see how the traveling preacher was viewed as a more pure style because they would not be trapped by the local views and habits and interests. I always felt that an invested pastor would be the most successful because they can help promote the ideas of God and the church into the local concerns and issues, which would create a greater impact. But I also see how this could create an only us mentality and could limit the scope of the gospel by only concerning themselves with local issues. I think about the focus on mission and the work with the 5 Points mission, as well as the work with the Native American population towards the West, is important as it set up the desire to share the good news with everyone. This also helped to provide women a more established platform in helping with the Methodist Church. So there you have it. That's my top 10 of the United Methodist Church in the early years of the Revolution.